Karakia.
Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā tara tara ki tai, ehi akia nā te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, tihei mauri ora.
Okay. Oh, and
Councillor Lyle as well.
and Councillor Lyle. Sorry, would someone like to move the two of them? Okay, Grant and Shane. All those in favour? Okay, it's carried. Thank you. Any extraordinary business? None. Any conflicts of interest? None. Nothing in public forum. The terms of reference are there, and confirmation of the last minutes. A mover and a seconder, please. Sam and Elizabeth, all those in favour? Against, carried. Is there any discussion on the last minutes? And I'll move my chairman's report. Is there any discussion? Could I have a second, please?
Sorry, Bob, I did have a question.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
You talked a lot about heritage in your report, and I just wanted you to maybe flesh out for us a wee bit about Arthur's past. So I think the committee might be interested to hear what's happening there.
With what? With
the house.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. We have a house at Arthur's Pass, which asked for some funding, and it's gone on over the time, and we've got Heritage New Zealand looking at it to actually try and break the job up into pieces that can be used from, because we don't know. There's probably only enough funding that we're giving, so we're looking at that at the moment. So it's gone over, but at this stage we've given them permission to go on. But in the near future, if something doesn't happen, we're going to have a look at that one, revisit it. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Lydia, you second that? You've got. Thank you. All those in favour? Against, carried. Your full report, please. Pardon? Oh, sorry. Okay. All right, good. Thank you. Yes.
Tēnā koutou katoa. In front of you is the Executive Director's report. The report highlights to you the 3 strategies that are currently under development. And while the final is due before Council in June and in July, there will actually be opportunities for meaningful engagement by councillors in regards to the strategy. So that there is a discussion tabled for Council on June the 5th to discuss and get feedback on the youth and the ageing strategy. And prior to that, there will be an opportunity for feedback on the economic development strategy on April the 15th. So just wanting to reassure councillors that there is an opportunity for meaningful input into that. We're just gathering some of the initial data and information so that we can share with you the themes and ask you some quite deliberate questions in regards to the themes that are emerging. In the meantime, each time we're reporting to this committee, we will be providing updates. And my understanding, but I'm looking for Claire or someone to just confirm, I think we hit the target of having engaged with 5% of the youth population yesterday. So we're delighted that we've been able to reach them, and there's further engagement still to do, but that was the target. In terms of just highlighting the fact that the business survey has been in the field and the customer experience survey has gone out for feedback. we already capture how much we do, and you get that information on a regular basis. The customer experience survey allows us an opportunity to ask how well we're doing it and what has been the impact in terms of well-being on both the individual and the community, so that we find that useful and directly informs the planning that we do across the CSF group. There's a community heritage strategy update included in the Executive Director's report, and there is a suggestion that a more fulsome report could be provided at the next committee meeting if there is an appetite for such. Also, we thought it was useful to give some further information on the community centres and halls. None of it was new information, but it was an opportunity to refresh you in terms of, firstly, what community centres and halls we're talking about and where they are located across the district. It also was an opportunity to remind you the basis of the fees and charges and why we can't sometimes give you an exact cost of a hire, because it depends. It depends if you're wanting the venue set up and packed down, or if there's tea and coffees to be provided, or anything along those lines. But this is an attempt to explain how the costing works, and you will have seen that there's a difference between a corporate hire and a community hire. I draw to your attention that there is an error on page 34. My apologies for that. It should read that in terms of the residents groups being able to use their hire discount on publicly bookable facilities, there are only two that it's not available at. One of those is Te Ara Aotea, and one of those is Selwyn Sports Centre. So in the report in front of you, it identifies others, and that's an error. And so my apologies that was included by mistake. And finally, it is our intention to try to swap these two committee meetings around at the next time we meet, so that allows the opportunity for more of the youth council members to come along to introduce themselves to councillors and to perhaps have an opportunity to talk to you individually following that report. So that's on the plan for the next committee meeting. But other than that, are there any questions?
Thanks for that, Denise. I have a quick question about, thanks for the list of community centres. I appreciate it. We talked a little while ago at one of our recent meetings about the costs of those and the incomes. I know this is a thing that we're often grapple with. And we talked about feasibilities, and I guess it would be quite interesting to know from the executive, I'm not sure what your title is, executive director. Congratulations, very grand title. From your executive director's point of view, is what should we do with some of these halls that are costing us money? We're not making in some cases we're making no money out of them, and so they're all costs. Obviously, I'm not asking for a question now, but maybe that's something that in long term, just some assurance that there is a community and financial optic that goes over those things, with a view of getting recommendations back to us about whether halls should stay.
Just thank you, and it gives an opportunity for us to do some further reflection. But Councillor, you'll recall that there was a paper put up just before Christmas that sought Council's permission to look at the future of some of those halls, particularly those that were underutilised and struggling to generate revenue of any significant amount. And so that piece of work is scheduled. It's scheduled to take place in the next 6 months, and that there are a range of options that sit on the table for that consideration. So some of those might include whether that a particular hall is actually able to be moved and should be moved to somewhere where it's actually more more able to be utilised. It might be that through some of the work we're doing in the sport and recreation area that there's a possibility of using some of those facilities for a single purpose. And I think in the past I've used the example of a martial arts dojo where there's different martial arts groups, but it's exclusively for the purpose of martial arts. So there are a range of options on the table about the future utilisation of that, and that also leads and connects nicely into that divestment and investment strategy work that's underway.
Yeah, the reason why I raise it is because at the moment where everything is looking at the mighty dollar, it's about having our own strategies and our own optics in the right place in that same space. So thank you for that.
Sam?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Tim. Yeah. Oh, did you say, sorry, Mr. Chair?
Your name's at the top on mine.
Okay, cool. Thank you. And thanks for the question just previously. I wonder whether we could have a list of the reports that are coming back to us in the minutes. So as a follow-up to the meeting, so we know that Hall's report is coming back and the date that it's due to come back, like we sort of have the matters arising from in other spaces. And then we could also include, Denise, I really like the way that you've given us the update on the youth and the ageing positively and the economic development base, but also on that we could capture when that's going to come back, so that even if you're not reporting on it directly, the minutes for this meeting would still capture when, on the table, we would know what's coming up at meetings to come. Thank you for giving us the map. I thought that was actually quite good, looking at where things are, because sometimes halls that aren't particularly well used are the only thing for 10 k's either side, or a 25k trip for someone to have to go to use something if we were to take one of the halls away. And I guess that's going to feed into part of your thinking of as to the future of where the halls sit. I did just wonder about the way that the facilities are laid out here, and you've gone through and given them, like, they're nicely color coded and we can see where they fit. But how does the thinking around where we direct people and what, like you sort of said, we might be able to nuance what people want, and we might have a better idea of a facility that's going to suit their needs. Can you just talk us through how that actually works? Because if someone comes to you and knows what they want their local hall, and you're trying to push them somewhere else, how does that interplay with our community?
The first part of my response to that is regards to when people email in or phone call in and make an inquiry around a booking. And you may recall the fact that we put all our facilities online, so that there's a visual for people who want to just have a look at the facilities. They don't actually know all of our halls and centres, they just know what they want, and they sometimes have particular requirements. And so so we are trying to give people choices and options, and part of that triaging of inquiries in, and I'll get Ginny to perhaps add to this in a moment, is that we ask some questions about what it is for, and try to ascertain what their the interest is in terms of and needs, and provide them with options, so that we don't just say, no, that one's booked. The one that you know about is booked. So sorry about that. So we would always look for options around what are you actually looking for. And a complement to that, or a supplement to that, is currently some of the campaigns that Ginny's been running, one of which is around weddings, and there are some what I would call boutique facilities that are really suitable for weddings, but people wouldn't necessarily know about them. So we have done that as part of the movement of community centres and halls into the direct operational management of council, so that we try to do what we can to encourage the utilisation of centres and halls.
That's cool.
And-
I guess my hope is that it's about enabling people to have the best experience they can rather than people perceiving it as council control over what they do. So it's just that dynamic between us trying to be directive and us providing options for people. So that's good to hear that there's a really good space there. And just secondly for me on the economic development strategy piece, really keen to see that bit of work done and an update for those in the room. Sharon and I met with Kia Aerospace yesterday, who have been doing a lot of work with Project Tawhaki and also at Russell's Flat with launching aircraft and looking at ways that they're going to be able to basically grow and develop an aerospace industry with other players here. And some of the things that our economic development strategy will cover will be things that Selwyn has been good at for a long time. But I'm also really keen to see some of the stuff that's new and emerging for our district be covered by that sort of strategy too. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. Shane?
Kia ora, Mr. Chair. E te whare atu nei, tēnā koe, e rau mara whenua, ai te rui hiki hiki, ngai tū hiwi, tēnā koe, tēnā koutou katoa, te wiritanga, te kaihoi, te waka. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Sam, fellow councillors. Thank you very much for the report, Denise, and Sam's probably already alluded to what I'm going to say, and it's around the localities plan for the halls and such, and I think it's just a little bit too early, and there's some confusion there because, first of all, Easton actually doesn't have a hall, and there's a hall in there, so that's an example of some of the discourse of, I guess, communications that are overlapping. And whilst I can appreciate the purpose of this probably is to say, hey, look, you've got facilities quite close to central areas. Well, actually, there isn't. And that report actually says within walking and cycling distance. Well, probably Dalston from Leaston. It actually adds further to the case of actually building something that's purpose-built for the future. And just in that vein, I guess libraries are, in a way, community facilities. For example, Te Ara Ātea, and I've said it before, that's living and breathing. She's like my auntie to me, and all of our children go there, and it's so really the definition around what is a building's purpose for, and we've had we've had that corridor in here before, really needs evolution, I think. So as we move forward into some of these projects, it'd be consideration to take into account. Fees, good job. I've actually had a mate that hired out the Kalinchi Hall last couple of weeks ago for a birthday party for the girls, for his daughter. And what a great facility. I went up there and had a walk around. It's really well maintained and they loved it. But what he said, mate, it's too cheap. Far out. It's so cheap to hire. It's ridiculous. So, we're getting different messages where some is too expensive. This is too cheap. But first of all, I think it's a fantastic facility. And as we look through these facilities into the future, they really are appreciated by the community. And then also, the rationale behind it, I think is going to be a very interesting conversation and journey for this council to have. But potentially this is a bit too soon as we're moving through the condition report for some of them. Are we talking about sports now, or is that coming? Or
the next report.
Next, yes, yeah. And just Sam's already talked about it, economic development. We think we're on a great track here, but I would like to see it come back sooner before long-term plan, as we'll be giving financial consideration to that portfolio. Thank you.
Thanks. Sophie?
Yeah, kia ora everybody. Thank you, Denise, for your patience with my emails this week. I guess I just wanted to say it out around the part on page 34 about official Selwyn residents groups discounts. I know we've discussed this round and round and round for the last few years, but I still find it strange that we're asking a group of volunteers that we apparently value for their community engagement at a different level to what councillors can get, and asking them to be finished by 8 o'clock at night when most of them can't actually gather a meeting until 7:30. And that's because of work and family commitments and the distances involved for a lot of them. So just putting it out there that I would really love to see, I know that this would have implications, particularly for staffed halls, if it was pushed out to 9 o'clock. But if we do actually want to show that we value them, we've got to think practically about how they can operate, not just about how we want them to operate, like how can they actually do the work that we're asking them to do, and that we should be valuing as, again, a group of volunteers who just want to advocate for their communities. Thank you.
Just because not everyone will have been a party to our email exchange, for those that are wondering, that conversation is around the fact that the discounted rate for community centres and halls for residents groups, it closes, it stops at 8 o'clock of an evening, because that is when the business hours of the hall being open stop, and any meeting that goes after that time means that the staff will be required to work extra. I guess rather than get into the detail of individual fees and charges, I think that some of the with Sharon's at the helm and the approach that she's taking, we are directing all of the fees and charges conversation into a bigger conversation around revenue and how that relates to the finance strategy and the divestment strategy. So Sharon, you might want to make a comment around that.
Thank you. And I'm borrowing Shane's because my microphone doesn't work. I'm not sure if that's deliberate or not. Keep me silent. Might not be a bad thing. Yes, in terms of rather than looking at our charges in silos and via a portfolio, we have taken an approach of looking at it across the whole organisation, which is a really good way to start looking at our fees and charges. And in terms of the team have also been sensible and pragmatic, and we've looked at also a CPI approach. So we've taken a whole of organisation approach as opposed to looking at things in isolation, because we can see the whole impact, and that is what's been factored into the LTP budget.
Lydia?
Denise, thank you for all this information. I appreciate it being all in one place rather than having to look through several different strategies, reports and whatnot to get an overview of what we have and what is going on. I just think when we talk about fees and charges, and some of our people are moving away from using SDC facilities because of costs incurred, and so it's really interesting to hear from you, Shane, around people thinking it's too cheap. On the other hand, we have people thinking it's too much, but that might be the type of hall they're wanting to use. So there is only the whole hall facility available, not smaller rooms. And just some of the restrictions that are imposed on them. I was given fees and charges in August 2023 to share with my community to prove that it wasn't too expensive. And that's actually quite different to the fees and charges that we have in this report. So I'm just wondering which one we should be using, because it should be still in the same financial year. Do you want me to carry on?
Well, just like in terms of dates, that some of those fees and charges that were approved by council in December 2022 came into effect at different times across 2023. So, but I'm happy to take that particular inquiry and look at what that difference might be. It might be that some of those fees and charges came into effect either subsequently or prior to, but very happy to follow that up directly with you if that's...
Yeah, great, thank you. And just around some of those restrictions is particularly the alcohol licensing on council premise. And I know that that was something that was decided around this table some time ago. And I guess I'm wondering if there's a bit of background information into that. Was it actually an issue in our halls? And if not, why was that decision made? And should it be something that we reassess? Because like our neighbouring councils don't put these restrictions on their facilities, and so we're actually seeing people from Selwyn going outside of Selwyn to use these facilities because it's kind of like I have to have an alcohol license. that's a bit hard basket and they just go elsewhere, whereas actually we should be utilising our hall. So I'm just wondering if there's something that happened that made this decision.
I can speak to that at length, actually, but in terms of where we've come from, and that particularly there are a number of issues when there was committee management of some of those facilities that involved the police and some fairly serious incidents and damage that was being done to facilities. And it is true, and I have first-hand experience of a son telling me that it was cheaper to go into town, but that didn't comply with the law, and so he could. Yeah, so there are facilities operating in Christchurch City. Excuse me. That are outside the law. What we tried to do was to as we started to move the direct operational management inside, to just give good guidance that directed people about how to stay within the law. And we worked quite extensively with the police at the time about different options of how that can be managed so that everybody's safe, but the law is complied with, because at the end of the day, we are responsible. But I know that was a very big issue for a lot of committees around being able to use them for activities that didn't comply with the law.
Yeah. And I guess the other part of that, as I'm coming from, is some of the management agreements for the likes of Castle Hill and Arthur's Pass is a particular issue for them, because they don't have anywhere else to go. And from their point of view, consuming a couple of drinks isn't actually an illegal thing for an adult to do. So, they sort of see it as particularly difficult and think, well, actually, we can't use our facility for a potluck dinner where you might have a beverage together, because there's nowhere else in those.
There is some
communities.
guidance that we could perhaps share with both those committees if that's an issue, because the guidance that does actually allow for these types of things, but certainly not those types of things.
Yeah.
And there is, but it does depend. It depends on the age group. It depends on the number. It depends on the day of the week, the time, etc., etc. So we would be very happy to share guidance with those two committees around that.
That would be really appreciated. And just the last thing, is when we talk about our residents group discount, and I guess this is along the lines of Sophia's, that appreciating our volunteers that do so much work for us in the community. And when we disbanded the committees, there would have been savings from discretionary funds and free hall hire and whatnot. And so where have those savings gone? Is that into the 24K of residents fund, where they can ask for 50% to be paid for?
I'm just trying to think in terms of the savings. I think there was some efficiency gains in terms of that. I don't know, and the funds still exist, although they are currently part of that bigger review about what they will be used for in the future. But the 24,000 does continue. But I'm not sure what other funds there might be. I'm happy to take that conversation offline. I can't think about any other specific amount of monies. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Okay, Elizabeth?
Hi, thank you, Denise. There was a lot of really good answers to a lot of my questions, and it just really put things together. And it was great that the examples that you gave were the unstaffed examples, actually, because it was good to see what the cheapest cost was that we could make available to the public. Obviously, coming back from what we're hearing from the community, it's kind of a bunch of different things. So just there's 3 points. So one of them is, I think at the moment, the communities doing fundraisers have to apply for funding, but is there the chance that we've got discounted rate for residents, but do we have, or potentially looking at in the future, a community fundraiser rate in which they can just openly see that there's a reduced rate for a fundraiser, and that's a set rate across the board, so they're not, each group is having to apply individually. It will just really lighten the load on our staffing. Also, I guess looking at the whole community wellbeing and how we can evolve that as to whether we potentially look at the community services and pensioner charges for maybe regular groups, or that kind of ties in with the fundraiser as well. Do we have the solution to the alcohol restrictions? Are we looking at addressing that as an opportunity to find a solution there? So, you know, as you said, there's a few grey areas and gaps in where we're going with that. But is it a case of some of the manned staffed facilities are able to address?
Okay, so just in terms of, I guess your points are all valid. The reality is that as governors, you set the revenue and finance policy and the finance strategy. And as Sharon talked about before, we're trying to look at cross council at some consistency and some opportunities around how revenue is generated. And so while the points you raise about special rates and that are all absolutely valid, they are part of the bigger considerations in terms of, well, it depends how much revenue we have to generate in order to, whether or not we can afford some of those discounts that individuals might propose. So that does feed into the bigger piece of work that that I guess fits in with the role of governors in terms of the strategies and the policies that give us the direction for us to do the operational management. The bit about the alcohol, I think my only response to that is that we did spend a lot of time working with the police and with our own colleagues here in-house around how do we interpret the law, and would this type of an event require a licence? Would this type of event require? And we have that guidance available. We don't put it up publicly because suddenly every event that applies for a hire magically becomes like the one that doesn't require anything. But it's a good guidance in terms of team and the advice and the questions that we ask. So if there are particular inquiries that you receive, I'd encourage you to just direct them through to our team, and they can work that through with the inquirer. It just depends.
Okay.
It depends on the event.
I'll just finish what I was about to say. So I think one of the big things, and we've discussed this at length for quite some time, is the upfront cost on the website is going to really bring that huge clarity to the community, because I think they still feel they aren't getting a full picture. And as Lydia said before, we've even had some variation in the results that we've got. And I feel like it's quite a big undertaking for staff to constantly be receiving the emails and have to go. It seems to be a long-winded way of dealing with that. How long do you foresee it until this new process is developed in which everything is going to be available on the website for these upfront costs for hireage?
I think this, in terms of the information that we've shared with you, it is to provide you with, I guess, an insight into the complexity of actually what the charge is, because it does depend. And so while we are going to be putting some information on our website, there are some complexities associated with, just exactly as you've mentioned, like if they're going to have alcohol, if they're going to require specific supports and setup costs that change the cost, and that sometimes can become quite hard to understand when they've just read something that just said X equals something per hour. So we are working on the languaging around that. This was the first, I guess, sharing of that information, and I would imagine a summary of this information is intended to be on the website within the next 6 weeks.
Deborah?
Thank you. Page 34, when we're looking at discounted groups, in the Springs ward, we have 3 schools that immediately come to mind where the halls are adjacent to the schools, and the schools actually use them on a regular basis. That's Springston, Broadfields and Ladbrokes, and there may be others throughout our district. And they've always been used as a joint facility alongside with the schools. What's the charging regime with regards to school usage?
This was an attempt to try to present to you the structure of the current fees and charges, and I don't have it at hand any of the individual schools beyond what's provided here. But I also encourage you to think, I guess, about the fact that you set the strategy and the direction that requires a certain amount of revenue to be generated, and while suggestions are welcome, we do have to reserve the right to make some decisions around the fees and charges that are set against each of the facilities.
Grant?
Page 25 talks about the community heritage strategy and key budget implications. I'm assuming from that you're wanting our approval for those numbers to go into the LTP. I just raised particularly about the Heritage Fund, where it's going from 40 to 150 and the consents from 5 to 20. I think we wonder whether we should just pause and go, well, if it's at 40 and it's not really effective, maybe there's a chance to think, well, maybe this fund has run its course and we should just get rid of it altogether, because there's an element of, in my view, if you have a heritage building, it's a bit like living next to the airport and complaining about aeroplanes, because most people have either willingly or otherwise bought into heritage buildings and know the implications. And if it's not a meaningful fund, why are we doing it? If, like 5,000 for consents, it's not meaningful. And I question whether it's our role to maintain heritage buildings, and I would say no. And if we're at this pointy end of starting to look at our LTP, well, why increase a fund from 40 to 150 and add another 15 on for consents? Why not go the other way and say, well, actually, that fund has run its course. Let's close them down, which is the view that I have. So I'm whether other people would view that way or not. So I'm assuming you're asking for us to approve that number today. The second thing, Regimental History Museum. I may have missed something, but I thought as a council we decided to steer away from this. But it's like a cat that's got 27 lives. It seems to keep coming back to us. When my view of the world is that the mayor should have a very direct conversation with the leader of the Burner military camp, that an organisation which builds its whole ethos around history and esprit de corps, that doesn't support its own heritage, might want to question itself. And I don't see it's the council's role to pick up the Army's heritage. So again, I just question whether that's our role. Sophie, I'm right behind you. We've given our community committees a fair hiding over the last year, and now to start making it harder for them and charging, I don't support that. I think there should be one representative committee per community which has free hire, whether it's 6 or 12 times a year. I think as a council we should at least do that. I think that's the bare minimum we should be doing. And I absolutely support that, Sophie. And the problem we raised about meetings, especially in rural communities, closing by 8, before we operated a real sort of a high trust model where people let themselves in, had their meeting and let themselves out at whatever time it finished. I realise the issue you have, Denise, with staffed facilities. I can see that's a problem. I absolutely understand that. But how do we move that high trust model into those facilities which allows those meetings to carry on? I guess that's the challenge, I suppose, because what we're seeing is, maybe it's not a bad thing, but we're seeing community meetings leave halls and go to the local pub now, or school hall or whatever, where it might be Scout Den, because they can't make it work in the council facility, which is not the intent of council facilities, in my view. Thank you.
Just to respond to your questions around the particular funds related to the heritage strategy, that is, you're not asked to, it's good to get your feedback on that at this meeting, but that will come back to you in a report in April. And I'm looking at Nicola and Stephanie to just assure me of the dates of that report that is coming back about the grants. And that will be the opportunity for you to say whether or not you support the level of funding, and that will have specific recommendations. All of those funds will come back to you. This was just to draw it to your attention, but it's good to get your feedback around that. I hear what you're saying around the Military Museum, and I understand that there's been a lot of conversations over a lot of time. I just draw to your attention the fact that the heritage strategy did, as it says here, as per goal 1.6 of the strategy, did talk about doing some initial work to see whether or not there was value in a feasibility which didn't require any necessary funding of council, but to see whether or not there were potential external funders that could potentially come to the party around such a project. So council did approve that, and we can bring a report back, and a more fulsome report, if that's the will of this committee, to the next committee meeting. But that's the direction of travel that internal work is directing us towards. And the point you make around being able to let people access, that there is a lot to the technology in some of our new builds that does mean we should be thinking about those things. So that's a really valid point, whether or not people can access some of those rooms outside ours without disrupting some of the other functions of that building.
Yeah, just with the Heritage Fund grant, a lot of these buildings that we are giving money to have had a heritage status put on them by the council. So they've got extra costs and things that they have to do to meet those. So a lot of it is to meet some of that cost as well.
Yeah, I would challenge that response, Mr. Chair, because generally heritage things are put forward for consideration by the council and then approved by the council. We don't go out willy-nilly looking for heritage items which we randomly put in there. They usually put forward by the community. So,
Certainly.
Bob, do you want to comment on that?
I take a more of an alternative opinion that we, through the district plan process, we actually have received nominations, and through that process and through the recommendations from our independent commissioners, we have listed a whole lot of new buildings onto that register, regardless of landowner permission or not. So there is a lot of extra requirements on those owners of those buildings now.
Thanks, Rob. Okay, is any other? Would someone like to move that we accept the executive director's report? Lydia and Sam, all those for? Against? Carried, thank you. And we'll go to the quarterly report.
So the quarterly report in front of you just highlights, this is just an update so that you are routinely updated on how we are tracking against some of the KPIs that Community Services and Facilities Group is directed at. You'll note that the Selwyn Aquatic Centre visitor numbers continue to increase, and that fitness membership is growing. The Arts, Culture, Lifelong Learning update has provided a bit of a focus on its work in the area of arts and public arts for your information. Community and economic development area, there's a video that was launched promoting the 6 ski fields in Selwyn, and that's had more than 500,000 views, and the tourism website continues to have increases in the usage, particularly in the last quarter. And the venues and events in terms of community centres and halls, the door count and the associated revenue is up in December, was up on numbers from the previous year. And the only other highlight, I guess, in that report is to let you know that we're meeting, councillors meeting with regional public service leaders in a forum planned for 29th of February. The focus is about central government agency and service provision and funding into Selwyn. The focus of this particular meeting is providing a profile of Selwyn and a focus on some of the themes that are coming out of the youth and the older person strategy, and an opportunity to better understand what funding or service provision some of those central government agencies are planning in that regard.
Okay. Any questions? Would someone like to move that we receive the community service facilities report?
Some questions, Bob.
Oh, you got.
Thanks. I know in the arts, culture and lifelong learning, there's a bit of a dip in digital visits in December, and I was just wondering, is there a reason why? But then there's a peak in November, so I was just trying to understand why that might be.
I might just invite Matt, if you've got a comment to make around that. No, nothing to add.
Yeah, so nothing specific. The public artwork for Melbourne, I don't know a lot about that, and I was just wondering if you could tell me about that. Terra Incognita, I don't know if we're looking at different films, but like, I love it. It's great, and that really sings to me. But it's not even about our ski fields, it's about backcountry skiing. And so I just found that kind of interesting. And there's 34Ks on YouTube, 34K views on YouTube. So I was wondering where the 500,000 views came from. And with Heartlands, I was just wondering what percentage of programs or initiatives are in our rural communities for the likes of Darfield and Leeston versus Rolleston.
Okay, so the first question was around Melbourne arts, and so I'll respond to that, but I'll actually get Matt to add to that. As far as I recall, this is the allocation, a very small allocation that had been accumulating every year, and there was a decision made by council that that the funds could be split to at least 3 of the wards. That didn't include Selwyn Central, because at that time there was a significant investment around public arts planned around Te Ara Aotea, which is also updated in this in the report. So it was identified that there was an amount of money available for public artwork in the Melbourne area, and there was consultation with the Melbourne Community Board at the time about some themes and issues that they wanted to be considered in the public artwork. And Matt, I'm not sure if you want to add something to that, which might mean you have to go to a microphone.
Come forward.
Tēnā koutou. That was a good summary, Denise, thank you. The total fund for the artwork available is 25K. And the current proposal is to think about a space outside of the Darfield Library and Service Centre. Otherwise, yeah, the themes generated by the Malvern Community Board were thinking about agriculture, things like water, Darfield being the gateway to the Alps, concepts around the land. So a really rich and fertile series of themes for us to put into an artist brief to look at proposals for.
Is there information that can be reshared? Is that come from the current community board or the previous?
It was the previous Melbourne Community
so
Board. We have talked about looping it back and going back out and updating them on where that's got to.
That would be appreciated, because I don't think that they're aware that this is happening.
And we do have a brief that we've written for the project that will be invite proposals from artists. So we could certainly share that. That's ready to go.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that. That'd be really great. Thank you.
Thank you. The other question you asked was around ski fields and the numbers. And so I'm looking at Shane, hoping if you could come to the microphone and just respond to that.
Kia ora koutou. Apologies, it was a previous colleague of mine who reported on that, but we can check the numbers. The film is distributed through multiple channels, so that includes Red Bull TV and other film festivals. So I imagine it's a calculation of all of those distribution channels. But I can check the number for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a fantastic film. But yeah, it isn't selling our ski fields, which, yeah.
The intention with that film, I think, is a collaboration with other regions as well. So we did have Queenstown, Wanaka and Selwyn all collaborate on that film, which
Thank you.
There was another question around Heartlands and what was the question again? I'm sorry.
The question around Heartlands was, and I just find the page in this report where Heartlands is. But it was around, it states here, all people living in rural and isolated communities have equitable access to the services and support they need through online, telephone and in-person support, and by strengthening connections between their communities, government and community services. And I guess that's the brief from Heartlands. And so my question is what percentage of initiatives and programs are being delivered to our rural communities for the likes of Darfield and Leeston?
Okay, so I can answer that. We broke the mould in terms of the funding and the model that we proposed to them, because in other rural areas right across New Zealand, there's to be one location in any rural location and one coordinator. And so in the proposal that Selwyn Council put up, we said we've got 4 libraries and service centres, and we will be using the distribution model through them, and we will have whoever the staff that work in those service centres trained about information and understanding around the different central government agency services, and we will be looking to engage with our government agency colleagues to get access through each of our 4 locations. So that's what, for us, that's what there's a couple of other pieces to that. One is that, for your information, we recently received a letter from the Ministry of Social Development who indicated that they would be looking to more actively make, I don't think they described it as case management services, but more one-to-one case meetings available from their staff using partners across New Zealand. It's quite a big shift. They haven't been prepared to come out for one-to-one meetings that much in the past, but also there have been programs run in conjunction with government agencies, with drop-in clinics, etc. And in the latest events brochure, and I'll find the latest one and give you a copy, we've put a bit of a key around all of the groups and the programs which we are doing in collaboration with either a business or a central government agency as part of that Heartlands initiative. So we don't think that necessarily people understand what Heartlands is, but they do understand some of those central government agencies. So we are letting community know when we're working in partnership through those brochures.
Thank you.
Grant, just one thing with the community art in Melbourne, was that something that CPW might want to get involved with? Because that you were talking about doing something.
Mr. Chair.
It's just something to think about in the future. Yeah.
Directly.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Would someone like to? We've got that one. Yeah.
Okay. So I'd like to now welcome Wim de Koning
So
from
we've still
Lincoln
got
University.
some questions.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Phil, sorry. No, Sophie, sorry.
Apologies. Hopefully mine's just a quick one. I was just going to ask what sort of, on page 42, it mentions initiatives targeting newcomers, and I'm just wondering what sort of, I haven't actually seen any advertised, and I'm just curious as to what sort of initiatives they are, please.
I might get Claire to come up and speak to that, but if we can maybe move on to the next question while we're waiting.
Phil?
Sure. Thanks, Denise. I refer to page 57 in the appendix 2, and there's I said in August, October, and December we got the art strategy. Public and performing arts is going to be coming up during that time. So I'm just going to get on my box for a moment. Can those two be separated out from each other? The reason why I ask that is because historically, when they consider together, the performing arts swallows the I repeat that. The public arts swallows the performing arts, and considering them together doesn't allow the unique characteristics of the performing arts to be considered. I guess if they can't be considered, if they can't be separated out into two different reports, is there any chance that we could see terms of reference or a scope for what the report will be? Maybe at one of the earlier meetings in April or June, so we can just have a look and see, and maybe have some conversation around the table. It's something that's hit the table a couple of times in the last 2 years, and we've sort of rolled around with it. And it'd be nice to see the opportunity. So, yeah.
Your point is noted, and I would imagine that there's an opportunity through one of the reports to provide a scope around what such a strategy should include, and if you're available, it would be useful to perhaps understand some of the issues that you're raising a bit more.
Well, if the community's happy for me to help to do that, I'm more than happy to work with you on a scope.
Thank you. Leah, did you want to just?
Kia ora koutou. The newcomer numbers are around Culture Fest and also Dinners of Samhain, so where people are bringing potluck and coming together with other newcomers and the Culture Fest celebrations.
Oh, okay. I guess I'd question that then, because neither of those are marketed exclusively at newcomers. In fact, the vast majority of people who attend all of those events are people who've lived in the district or in New Zealand for a very long time. Yeah, that seems a bit strange to me. But thank you very much for the information. I don't think they should be classed as part of a newcomer strategy, really. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you. Your point is noted. And if I could just go back to Councillor Glidden's inquiry regarding a drop in digital visits in December, that was likely due to issues with the library app, and plus there was a fortnight's gap in Google Analytics.
Shane?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kia ora koutou. Were you talking about sports as well in this report? Yes. Oh, great. Good. I just wanted to have a shout out to James, yourself and your team, swimming in particular. Yeah, great facilities locally and out in Ellesmere as well with the Southbridge pool. Actually had a mate take his family there for the first time. And they didn't realise what a wonderful facility it was, and it was quiet as well. So they had a great time, and they're actually bringing more people back, and also some residents from Christchurch as well. Couldn't believe it when they went out there. So well done to you and your team, and also great to see ability of current facilities and where does it look like in the future. I visit the Selwyn Aquatic Centre here in Wajinga. She's chocker, and I think, moving forward, looking forward at economic development, surely widening our scope around not owning everything, but certainly partnering should be part of the scope moving forward. Academy Rugby League and the swimming program. The connection to the local Ralston Rugby League club here, and also whether they're working together, how they're working together, and is the opportunity for scope for that club around club rooms, as I know they're quite interested in developing something wider in that space. spoke about the Leaston Southbridge pool. But yeah, that's it, mate. Thank you.
Cool, thanks Shane. Kia ora, everyone. Yeah, I think in regards to the aquatic centre and the capacity of those sites, it's a continuing conversation at our end. I think there's a couple of external factors happening at the moment that will be important to consider as we move forward. One, in April, the Matatiki Hornby facility is opening. There is some cross-boundary pollination, I guess, happening at the moment with our swim school, and so there are some users from that area of Christchurch and in between coming across to use Selwyn Aquatic Centre. Also, Parakiore Metro facility coming online at some point, whenever that actually comes to fruition. So, I guess in that whole space, what we've got in the proposed in the LTP is to do a refresh of the aquatics facilities plan once those facilities once impact for those facilities are known. We do have capacity in swim school at the moment to continue growing. At the moment, we're at about 3,500 kids. That can go up to 4,000. 4,200 is actually 100. So there is some scope to grow in there. But I take your point as well that actually at some point the private sector may have to take over some of that. We can probably not provide some control in the district given the space we've got. So yes, it's a continuing conversation. I guess is what we're at the moment, and it's something we're going to look into in the next financial year once we've got that finances approved through the LTP process. Because at that point, it's also going to be important to look at.
James, can you turn your microphone back up?
Yeah, something's happening.
We're good? Okay. It's going to be important to look at what's happening in Darfield and the outer regions over the next 15 to 20 years as well.
I think, sorry.
In terms of the rugby league, yeah, that's a great initiative. That's really driven by Malcolm and that team at rugby league, though. So they're doing a great job there. So every 8-year-old that engages in rugby league will get a free swimming lesson or water safety lesson, or a series of water safety lessons. We've got some session times that they can engage in. They've got some external funding that has made that happen, which is really great. And in terms of your question, there's a big push around the future of rugby league. From Canterbury Rugby League to get the sport growing. They're conscious that they're really underperforming in terms of the numbers of players that they have in the district at the moment. And this is where the sport liaison team that was approved through the change management proposal 2022 is really coming to fruition. So Trent's been able to, and his team have been able to move around exactly what that looks like from a rugby and a league point of view. They're going to basically have a home at Broadfield. At Brookside. And they're going to have lit training facilities and all that sort of thing. What that means for club space moving forward is kind of going to be up to them. That has not been a conversation yet brought up by them. I think they recognise there's a long road to hoe in terms of getting some capacity in their clubs before they go and do that. But I think we're going to see some significant growth into league moving forward.
Cool. Just supplementary, Mr. Chair. Additionally, great to hear the support for wider sport, being a Selwyn Sports Centre, and I see there's no mention of gymnastics on there. Is that coming in future?
Absolutely. So I've done a draft report internally that we're just working through at the moment, and we'll be able to brief council in the coming weeks around what that looks like.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sharon?
Thank you, Bob. Just to add on to Shane's question around public-private partnership, that's where the opportunities come through our ED strategy, but also our investment and disinvestment strategy. And once we have those strategies in place and have worked through, I would say over the course of from this long-term plan to the next one, council will be in a position to give consideration to what the opportunities are in front of us, because we'll have some really good strategic frameworks in place.
Would someone like to move and second this report, please? Phil and Shane, all those in favour? Against, carried. Thank you. It's up to you.
So now, apologies for my bolt at the gate earlier. I'd just like to welcome Wim de Koning from Lincoln University, who's in person today. And I think Sam Elder from Orion was going to be attending virtually, but now she's unwell. But the presentation is on the economic benefits of collaborative local energy planning in Selwyn. Wim is the Director of B-Link Innovation at Lincoln University, and Sam is the General Manager of Energy Futures at Orion. Both have been very active contributors to our Selwyn Economic Development Strategy work to date and have participated in our various stakeholder engagement events. When you have 30 minutes to present, and then there will be 15 minutes available at the end for questions. But thanks for coming along today.
Thank you so much, everybody here. Kia ora. I'm just waiting for the PowerPoint presentation, but before that actually comes up, let me introduce Sam Elder and myself. Sam is the General Manager of Orion Energy Futures, and herself and myself basically teamed up to present you an opportunity this morning. My name is Wim de Koning. I am the co-director of the Center of Excellence of Transformative Agribusiness at Lincoln University. So we're really looking at something different from today, because we know that everything is changing around us. And we're getting the presentation up and running. So the whole, I'll just talk through it. And so the whole idea was, both Sam and myself were invited to the economic development strategy process that Selwyn District Council is doing. And because both Sam and myself are locals here in the Selwyn District, Sam lives in Lincoln, I live in Taitapu. Our heart is in this district as well. So what we saw was that while presenting in the workshops, we were exposed to the ambition of growing value, building resilience, and leveraging uniqueness for the Selwyn District. And one of the things that we saw was, in building resilience, is that Selwyn District really looks at a place-based economy. And that's when I think Brett Olson asked us the question, why would you want to be in Selwyn 10 years from now or 15 years from now? And that's basically what got us going, Sam and myself, by actually coming up with something that we think is a unique opportunity to increase the value of Selwyn to the people that live here, but also to the wider New Zealand and global community. So that's basically where we started. We realized that, oh, there we go. Or at least I see it in front of me. Yeah. Okay, I'll just continue without slides. This is just being in front of a classroom at the university and things going wrong. So we can do this. We have this. So in today's presentation, what we're actually going to do is we're actually going to take you on a little bit of a journey. We're actually going to look at an opportunity to the local energy transition that will deliver value, resilience, and uniqueness for Selwyn and create a pathway for other councils. So we really want to make sure that we are leading here as well, because we have a unique opportunity to do so. So I will actually talk you through what is actually an energy transition. And that is actually the part that Sam Elder was going to do. Then I'm going to talk about unlocking the ambitions and places of communities. Again, a piece that here we are, a piece that Sam will do as well. So if there are any questions about those parts and I can't answer them, I'll make sure that Sam will actually come back to you and with the appropriate answer. Then we're going to present the opportunity that we think is here in Selwyn, and of course then we'll open the floor for discussion and questions. We will not be presenting you a business case today. So it is really, we're presenting you an opportunity. So there will be next steps hopefully you will see that that's what we need to do. As said, energy transition. What is energy transition? If we look at energy, we basically put some sort of a fuel in a car and we would drive around. We would plug in a device at home into the grid, and we were really thinking in compartments. The energy system is changing, so it's actually changing from being a network and networked energy, actually seeing that mobility becomes more electrified as well, and then suddenly you see the whole economy, including agriculture, being involved. Because what are we going to do with our waste? What are we going to do? What are we going to do with energy crops that we could grow? So therefore, we need to look at energy as a system, and that system needs to have a place in our society. The biggest trilemma, and this is a biggie, is that if we want to have regional prosperity, we need to balance three things. And we need to balance these things quite carefully. And if we don't balance them, we lose the prosperity in the region. So we are talking about sustainability, or in energy terms, decarbonization, the energy security. We'll be talking a little bit about the resilience of the energy system, and then of course access and affordability. That is a really important one as well. So I will talk to all three points a little bit later, but I think what I want you to remember of this slide is that it is a really tricky balance to get it right, because all three need to be in that equation for us to get regional prosperity. Decarbonization. Boston Consulting Group and the government and everybody else that you're asking basically will tell you that this society is electrifying. Whether we like it or not, the future will be electric, more and more and more. So that puts a little bit of a strain on the system, as we designed the system for today's use, or I could argue for yesterday's use. And now we're into a transition where we're actually looking into the future. So decarbonization will put pressure on the system. So we could decarbonize the whole system, but we can only do that again looking at a trilemma if we have it in balance. The Boston Consulting Group made a report, and I can give you the link to the report as well if you want. That basically we need to increase our electricity capacity by about 80%. So that then becomes a question: how are we going to do that, and where are we going to do that? Will it be place specific or place agnostic? And I come back to that later. Oh, by the way, if there's any questions in between, just feel free to interrupt me, and I'm used that my students do that as well, so it's all good. Energy resilience is another one, because we are in we have climate change. We have the Alpine fault line that is close to us. Well, I live in Taitapu, and I saw the whole Port Hills being lit up, not in a good way. So we definitely see there are a lot of hazards coming our way. And again, if you can imagine that we would get our electricity only from one source, it would definitely have impact on the resilience of our energy system. On the other hand, you see that we are getting more and more and more electrified. So in other words, if one of these hazards appear, we have electrified at that moment in time, we should question the resilience that we're actually looking at. So there is a risk that we need to mitigate some way or another. The third part of the trilemma is, of course, equity. And there are two things there. It is affordability and it's access. And you can imagine that if we would only look at this from an economic point of view, it is really expensive to get Arthur's Pass electricity. but is that an argument not to get them electricity, right? So again, their access, we need, but luckily technology is bringing in a lot more possibilities. So it could well be that we come up with a solution there that does not require any investment in current infrastructure. On the other side, affordability is already an issue at this moment in time. If you look at the right-hand graph, you see the different deciles in the community here, and the top one is the lowest decile. So those are the lowest incomes, and they have the highest electricity price. They have the highest electricity bill of all of us. So again, we could argue, so Sam and myself argue, that affordability is already an issue. So we need to make sure that moving forward, at least we will address that. So hopefully now I've showed you where the energy transition needs to go and what we actually need to consider. And the beauty is that we can actually use communities and the place-based economy to come up with some of the solutions. And the cool thing here is we are not the first in the world. So there are other communities globally that have already gone through this process. I will show you a slide from the United Kingdom, where they basically, oh, move this away if I can, yeah, where they actually had to make a decision. Are they going to go for a place-specific energy transition or a place-agnostic? And they cost both of them. And basically, a place-specific is way cheaper and it gives way more benefits to the local economy. So if I then go back to the first slides that you didn't see, but you presented to us in the workshop, where Selwyn District is aiming for a place-based economy, congratulations, ladies and gentlemen, you are definitely on the right track, because a place-based economy will give you the opportunity that the investment will be lower and the benefits will be greater. So what I'm basically going to propose to you today, together with Sam Elder, who is unfortunately not here, as you know, you guys are already having that train of thought in that direction. If we then decide to go for a localized energy transition, that has a huge effect on the planning of our infrastructure. As you know, we're in Selwyn District, we're depending on Orion to actually making sure that the infrastructure is there. When we switch on the light, that the light actually comes on. So in order for them to make sure that that's still the case in 10, 20, 30 years to come, they need to start planning. They need to start planning the infrastructure. They're not Harry Potter. We can't do this, and the world has a different color. So what they're actually doing is, together with ECA, government energy agency, central government. They did a test in a survey in North Canterbury, looking at that, and again that report is available. At that moment in time, Orion is running different scenarios to figure out, okay, what if Selwyn District Council decides A, what would be the outcome? What if all the people that live in Selwyn District will be electric tomorrow? What consequences will that have? So they're running different scenarios, and that actually comes into the asset management plan, and that is of course what you as shareholder of Orion are actually looking at as well. And again, I'm touching the surface here because, as you know, I'm Lincoln University. Sam was supposed to present this, but this is basically the process that Orion is going through. So the sooner we know where we want to go when it comes to the energy transition, the better we can actually build an infrastructure within Selwyn District that can actually give that regional prosperity to the people that live in Selwyn. Okay. I've survived doing the SEM bit. At least I think I did. So the opportunity for Selwyn. So the opportunity that we see is to develop a collaborative place-based energy plan for Selwyn that would enable Selwyn's ambitions, that would activate the communities, but also the rural communities to participate. It would support the activities that the Canterbury Mayoral Forum is already doing, and it has an opportunity for Selwyn District to actually be a pathfinder for other EDBs and councils. Okay, so we asked ourselves a question, Sam and myself, and would it be possible to create a collaborative local community energy plan that would enable resilience, that would create a holistic approach, so leaving nobody behind and leaving nothing behind, decarbonize farming, increase farm income? Could we then create additional affordable energy that could replace fossil fuels more easily? And can we then still maintain productivity, also in the rural areas, and perhaps support urban growth if that is required? And most of all, would that strategy then underpin the unique value proposition that Selwyn is really working on in the economic development plan? Remember, right? This is unique, right? We want to be here in 10 years' time, and can an energy plan actually help us do that? Well, it's possible to have multiple outcomes. It is possible to have multiple outcomes. There is no silver bullet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a simplified version of those multiple outcomes, and then I'm going to put a little bit nuance there that we probably need to make it a little bit more complex. But for argument's sake, I keep it a little bit simple, and then I'll put in a little bit more complexity. So it is possible to have local renewable energy production that is connected to the grid. It is possible to, at the same place, to have high-value agriculture and horticulture. At the same place, it is possible to improve water quality. At the same place, it is possible to increase biodiversity and ecosystem services. And at the same place, it is possible to have community engagement. So introducing the concept of an energy farm. What we're doing now is, I'll show you a picture. And this is just an artist impression. Together with Massey University, we are actually creating a digital twin here, because there is a couple of decision-making mechanisms behind here. So we're actually making a digital twin of this system and basically putting a decision-making model behind this. But what we're actually proposing is what is called agrovoltaics. And agrivoltaics is not new. If you look at Europe, if you look at Germany, if you look at South Korea, if you look at Japan, this is happening, right? So again, we're not doing something really experimental. It is off-the-shelf technology. We're not doing anything strange. We just haven't done it here in Selwyn. So the whole idea is to put a solar array in a field and design the solar array in such a way that between the panels, high-value horticulture or agriculture can actually be done. And what we've seen in the early modeling, growing crops is more valuable than letting sheep graze underneath the panels. And there's a whole bunch of evidence that under the panels there is this microclimate going on that makes sure that the plants use less water because the evaporation is less, and there is a temperature difference, etc., etc., etc. I won't go completely passionate about this, but like there is a lot of possibilities there. We also will provide electricity at a localized spot where we would say, hey, we really need to have electricity here because of I don't know, a dairy factory somewhere in Darfield. So we can really look at the bottlenecks in the grid, and we can put these renewable energy generations elsewhere. Of course, we're looking at borders and making sure that we grow natives in there. Very much because we don't want to have glare going into traffic going by, but it's also using natives and non-natives. We create that biodiversity there. Of course, when we put a building on the ground, and you could, I argue that the solar panel is just a crop that we're putting on the land, and what we're getting is, on one hand, electricity, and on the other hand, we get a favorable situation for plants to grow. We also get stormwater, so we need to do something with that. So again, there we're proposing that these sites will actually have an engineered wetland, and that engineered wetland would have a nice biodiversity as well. And then you could imagine that if, for example, we put blueberries underneath the panels, those blueberries need to have pollinators. Wouldn't it be great that if we then make sure that the plants we grow in the wetlands will actually take care of the pollinators that we need to use in spring, but make sure that they have enough food to survive winter. And of course, the beauty then is, then we could have community outreach as well, because we can actually bring them into the wetlands, and that can be a wonderful place to walk your dog on. Or it could actually say, well, listen, let's let the communities actually help them to growing brassicas and sell the produce at the local farmers market. So there is this whole ecosystem that we can build around it. So imagine that Selwyn District will be 100% powered by Selwyn District co-generated renewable energy by 2030, 6 years from now. And could we be circular and zero carbon for 2040? This is, of course, something that you need to consider, but I would be really supportive if Selwyn District would actually take such an ambitious approach. The next couple of slides, I only focus on the renewable energy part, so I will not talk about zero carbon and circular, because that will take another time. So the question that we ask ourselves, would it be possible to create 100% additional electricity in Selwyn that is renewable? As you guys know, we have Lake Coleridge at the moment, and that is the only generation that we have in Selwyn District of size, next to the fact that a lot of buildings are now being fitted out with solar panels, but that is very much an individual process and not driven by a council ambition. Current Selwyn demand, and these are real figures from Mainpower, is about 600 generation needed if we want to double this. And this is very much in line with what the Boston Consulting Group is saying us, that we need to increase capacity about 80%. So we go a little bit more there. We assume that we have 5% loss. Then you have, okay, what is the annual generation of a solar farm? And again, I went extremely conservative. Most solar farms that are being around in the world generate roughly about 100. I'm calculating with 65. So the number that I'm going to give you when it comes to the hectares that we need is most probably way larger than we actually need. Plus, I already told you that I'm going one-dimensional. I'm only going to talk about solar. You see the second fun fact underneath: sun is not a magic solution. We require a supply-demand holistic solution. So most probably we'll be looking at, I don't know, wind or something else to addition to solar. But for argument's sake, is this possible? Well, we need about 1,000 hectares in worst case scenario that we can actually convert into agrivoltaics. So we're not converting land into solar panels. No, we're going to plant solar panels as a crop on agricultural land. If you then put it in perspective, it is about a little bit less than 2% of all the active dairy area, or about 0.15% of the whole Selwyn area. So if you put that 1,000 hectare in context, it is not a large area. If we do this, then we would be able to say to everybody living in Selwyn, in theory, everybody could drive an electric car and we would still have 50% electricity to spare. The beauty with solar, it is off-the-shelf technology, and putting in an ambition that we want to do this by 2030 is really achievable. So we're not doing magic. The beauty here as well is when we were brought together by Selwyn District to talk about the economic development plan strategy, we were of course surrounded by a lot of other businesses. So we floated this idea, and the majority of the employers, the largest employers in the Selwyn District, is really supportive here. So you already see that there is this whole support that would be possible if this would be the ambition of Selwyn District. Then of course there is the question, well, what about the people living here? Would there be social acceptance? Well, what we did within the Centre of Transformative Agribusiness, we basically did a survey. We did a survey looking at the whole of New Zealand, and the responses that we were correct. So in other words, we had a nice spread over the whole of New Zealand, so the majority came out of Auckland, of course, because that's where the majority of people live. Gender, 50-50. Age-wise, beautiful the profile of current New Zealand. So from an academic point of view, these figures can be trusted. And basically what we see that for solar, the support is above 95%. So 95% of New Zealand says solar in rural areas, no problem. Solar on my roof, no problem. Solar on your roof, no problem. They either say that they neither agree or disagree, so they basically don't care, or they're quite positive. For wind, and I don't have that slide here, it is a little bit less positive. You're probably looking at the region of 80% that basically says neither agree, disagree, or agree or agrees. So there is a little bit more work to be done there. And the beauty there is, as you see the pictures on the bottom, most probably when we asked about solar, people would think the left picture. So solar covering the whole surface area. Where of course we are talking about solar being seen as a crop in an agricultural field. So therefore there will still be agriculture and food production and community engagement on that field. So we maintain that rural activity and prosperity. Enough said. Discussion next steps. So this is where I think I'll go through this slide, and then I would love to hear your questions, your comments, and hopefully your commitment that you will look at this really seriously to integrate this as a part of your economic development strategy. So we really think that a collaborative community energy opportunity will create that unique proposition for Selwyn, that in the future we actually create this place where industry and new companies want to come, because it is just a nice sustainable place where these things are happening. We believe that your strategy, your economic development strategy that you guys are developing, could actually leverage to explore the local energy transition and co-locate the energy plan that actually would unlock a lot of the aspirations that you guys are presenting in your economic development plan. So we think that through Selwyn's ambition and the strategy that you're developing, you will facilitate the leverage of local leadership, insights and expertise. You will actually activate community, but also the rural community, to participate and co-create. So what we are saying, there is an opportunity that the investment required does not need to come from abroad. There are really good examples that communities can actually get involved. Side note, we do not ask Selwyn District to invest in this. We only ask for your ambition and your leverage and support. And of course, it supports your place in the Canterbury Mayoral Forum, and Selwyn District can be exemplar in New Zealand. I'll leave it there, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Questions? Sam?
Yeah, kia ora, Vim. Thank you for coming in and presenting that. I think it's a great testament to the work that Sharon and the team here have done to bring great minds together to think about what could be achieved. And out of a few conversations, you guys have come back with this. So that has certainly shown just the investment to date has been worth it. And I think that the key part is what you just mentioned at the end, is that how do we create a conversation that allows a community to buy into an aspiration that doesn't just require us investing, but actually allows those that are willing and wanting to have that level of guidance from our community to actually have something to buy into that they know they're not alone in. And so far we haven't done that as Selwyn around this conversation. So that's a bigger part, and then you're actually fulfilling a piece of that. A couple of questions I've got is around, it's a reasonably small land area you're talking about doing here. Does the location of that matter? Could that be 20 different spots, or are you thinking that's 2 spots? And as far as location in Selwyn, again, has there been any thought about closeness to existing infrastructure or particular landscapes where it works or doesn't work as well?
Kia ora, Sam. Thank you for the compliments, and thank you, and indeed a shout out to Sharon and team. Fantastic. There is work to be done. The whole idea, Sam, is to look at the Selwyn district, look at where the infrastructure is now, look at where we think economic growth will happen, and we really need to sit together with people like Orion, the larger employers of the Selwyn district, and really get that leadership group together, because then Orion needs to figure out how are we going to do this. So what we are actually thinking of, and this is just off the back of a napkin type of thing, right? Because we have not done the work, is that it will be closer to 20 or 30 or 40 different places throughout Selwyn than 1 or 2. Because the whole argument is that we really want to make sure that we have a place-based approach, which would fit with your place-based economy aspirations. And then it will actually leverage resilience as well, because if then a disaster happens, and it will happen, we just don't know when, then at least there is more resilience in the community as well. So that conversation needs to be had. My estimation is it will be multiple smaller sites rather than a few larger sites.
Thank you.
Okay. Elizabeth?
Hi, thank you for that presentation. I have a lot of questions. You might want to get your pen and paper ready so you can, because I'll just fire them all out and you can answer them. So I have a great interest in solar. I have solar myself, so I'm used to dealing with that, and I know what that's like on a day-to-day basis. Do you have solar yourself? Just curious if that's something that you live with.
Currently, I don't.
Okay.
And I was fortunate, or we were fortunate enough to build in Taitapu a new house. And basically, I had a really big discussion with my builder because we went over and above the New Zealand building code. So we really built an energy efficient house.
Mm-hmm.
My electricity bill at the moment is never higher than $200 per month. And so from an economic point of view, it makes no sense for me to invest invest in solar. So again, I'm using what I'm teaching as well, because it all needs to be aligned.
Okay, that wasn't my questions, but that was just of interest. So to reach the sustainability target nationwide, have you guys calculated just for Selwyn, or have you done a calculation on the grander scale for the entire country as to the land mass acreage that's needed for the entire country to be hitting those targets, 0, 20, 35, or whichever target you wish to reach? Second question, what other power generating systems are also in the pipeline to be used alongside solar? You did mention wind, but are you also looking at the sea approach? Obviously, there's sea panels, there's other wave technology that's coming through. Question 3, what date is New Zealand looking at completing to phase out the coal burning that we currently do? Question 4, Orion has spoken of intermittent power for each property. Is there a model on what that looks like? So we get an idea of the intermittent power that each home will be receiving in the future when we go to this model. Question 5, how do we avoid the regular power cuts and issues faced in California and other parts of the world? Looking to that sustainability, are we looking at relying on batteries and, you know, how are we having that kind of resilience going forward? Solar panels on roofs and ocean beds, so I talked about that before. Question 6, batteries which are used commercially, because we currently use them in different business areas, they're replaced annually at the moment. What are we planning to do with the used batteries? And do we have a circular economy and a first world solution, an in-house solution, rather than sending them offshore for China?
Sorry, could mind if I interrupt? I think you've got some really, sorry, Mr. Chair, I'm interrupting. I think you've got some really valuable questions there, Elizabeth. What Wim has presented today is very much at a concept stage and at a very high level. What I'd really like to do is take the questions that you've got written down, and between a combination of our staff and what's relevant to them in relation to this concept, we'd really like to give you those answers, but probably better to do that offline if that's okay, because your questions are quite broad reaching and extend beyond I think the presentation and the concept that you've had put to you today, if that's okay.
Shane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tēnā koe e Wim. Te rangatira o whare wānanga o Aoraki, ngā mihi mahana i ngā kōrero kaupapa today. Thank you very much. You know, I immediately wrote down agrivoltaic because there are a number of interests in the area to develop that already. So I was interested in your calculation on 40%, on a 80% increase, and presumed that it was relative to Selwyn, because New Zealand, just having a quick search, is currently 40% renewable. Are you suggesting that the science behind, because there is some tension around the issue at the moment, and would the science suggest that it is relatively low impact on the environmental and on the environment, this type of agrivoltaic?
Thanks, Shane.
Sorry, it's me again.
Okay.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. Again, I think that's a wee bit along the similar lines to what Elizabeth is asking, is that it extends probably beyond your presentation, and I guess for those kinds of questions, and again, Shane, really happy to take that and take that offline and get you some answers.
Well, I guess in principle, absolutely supportive and appreciative of your, as we said at the same table, your mātauranga wrapping around this and going away and coming back with fresh ideas. And I guess that's, for me, that's where governors sit into the future of, you know, what can we enable today that benefits our babies, our moko puna, into the future. So yeah, you know, if you're suggesting that maybe like a local alcohol policy, there's a local energy policy as well around the future of what this could look like, certainly I think that's definitely what we're here to do. You haven't spoken about the economic value and whether that's part of this or not. You know, economic value of potentially manufacturing locally. Locally here, there are considerations that there's, you know, potential for 50 jobs and over 3 years of a development of considerable size, and then later on full-time jobs. So there's an economic uplift and benefit locally. Glad that you've put the size and scale in there. So that my question around current interest would be, you know, where are we looking at the moment? And water, I was just interested in how water flow is part of potentially the benefits. How are we wrapping, you know, if you mentioned the tri-dilemma, where does water fit into the larger scheme of things? And really, you know, thinking into the future, infrastructure, including roading, self-charging vehicles on roads, that, you know, consider that into the future, and potentially if we're pumping it back in the grid, then there's dollars to come back for our roading because it's all the same thing. Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Ka mihi.
Thank you very much for your questions, and I hear what Sharon and is saying. Just in general, when we started this presentation, we basically said, well, we're going to use solar as an example to prove that it would be possible within a really strict time frame, say 6 years, because of the existing technology. The problem with solar is that I only get electricity when the sun shines, right? So again, I have a problem there because you could say, well, when the first humans came to Earth, we were sleeping at night and working in the daytime, right? And we worked a little bit shorter in winter and a little bit longer, but that's past, right? So into the future, we are dependent on the electricity. So 100% solar solution is not desirable simply due to the fact that the technology is not giving us the answers that society wants. So we were actually looking at a myriad of different renewable energy generation technologies. But the beauty is that we don't have to do them now, because we know in future our electricity demands will increase as well. I don't know what type of technologies that will be available in 2040. And I'm not really worried about that, because there will be more technologies available. Solar is just a very nice low impact technology off the shelf. Where we are going to put this, how we are going to do this needs to in consultation with all of us, including Orion, simply due to the fact that we need to look at supply and demand. Where do we think we need electricity? Where do we, like when I looked at this for the university, I said, we have excess electricity in the weekends. Shall we ask the students to come and study in the weekends? Well, of course, yeah, it's a great idea, right? The answer is, yeah. Anyway, so we're really looking at a complex issue that, unfortunately, if you hope that I would solve that for you today, I cannot. But the only thing that I'm saying is, the opportunity that we give you, that you are in the stage of this economic development strategy. If you actually put a local energy plan in that strategy, you can actually leverage what you guys want to do to be unique, to be resilient, and to be place-based. And you will actually bring prosperity and that prosperity in the community in Selwyn. I focused on Selwyn only, really selfish. And I know I live in New Zealand as well, but my heart is here. So, and I got the challenge from Sharon and team to be proactive and think. So that's where Sam and myself came in with this opportunity and this presentation.
Yeah.
I know
Deborah,
I didn't answer your questions, but hopefully
we still have a couple of questions.
Okay, yes,
from
please.
Deborah.
Just briefly, and I realise that this is in an early stage with regards to the proposal, or just with regards to connectivity to Orion. Is there an understanding of the proximity of the current Orion substations that would need to be connected through to the proposals? Or is that still in discussion about strategically where these would best be located to meet where the substations are for the current Orion?
Well, again, I can't speak for Orion. Orion knows exactly where the substations are. Orion knows at the moment exactly where their energy demands are. If Selwyn decides to go for a place-based approach, at that moment it triggers probably a scenario that Orion needs to calculate through and come up with the areas where we need to start adding that place-based renewable energy generation. So that is very much in the next steps. And based on what you are deciding, wanting to do with this opportunity.
Sharon?
Thank you. I waited patiently this time, Mr. Chair. I do apologise. I think there's the point I think out of today is one, the value and the initiative and thinking that's occurred from the economic development workshops, and what would be really useful is to get some guidance and general sense of support from councillors that you're happy for us to continue down this pathway in the partnership approach under the umbrella of the economic development, and potentially ultimately as part of the investment and disinvestment. And it's really handy because both Grant and Shane are our governance partners and those spheres for both of those strategic items. And I guess, you know, that for me, that would be really helpful to have a general sense of whether you continue, where you believe that this is the right track for me as CEO to be going down to continue to foster these relationships. And it also fits in really nicely with our intent around having a memorandum of understanding with Lincoln University to help shore up these opportunities into the future. That's just the bit I wanted to add.
Okay, Sophie.
Yeah, kia ora, sir. Thank you very much for coming. I'm just going to go straight with the full-on support. Let's go do it. I really enjoyed your presentation. Thank you very much. I mean, especially there's a lot of good possibilities, and I think this is a great area to do this sort of work. I know nationally there's the energy strategy still being worked on, but that doesn't mean we can't get the jump on them. We have a lovely big flat space. We have massive Orion network. Two of their big main lines run through the district. They've got a whole new establishment on Telegraph Road. If we do it place-based, then we can connect stuff right next to our smaller townships, as well as not just straight into a network and sell some of it. There's health benefits from reducing the amount of coal and oil burners on the road and all that sort of thing. Yeah, and this, as you said, the solution exists now. Like, it's not a perfect solution, but if we hang around and wait for the perfect solution, then frankly, it's going to be way too late. This is something that we can do now. And yeah, I'm really interested in finding out more about how we make it happen.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation, and a lot of work's gone into this already. My question is around, as I look at Activate the rural community to participate and co-create, and you've already done an initial survey, is there any sentiment that you've received from the rural community already, or?
Yes, we did. The rural community, farmers and landowners, they are being tasked to decarbonize, fact of life, right? And they need to remain compliant on one hand to New Zealand legislation, but on the other hand, for them, way more important is to maintain access to global consumer markets, because the demands for sustainable produce is going up. So they realize that they need to do something. This is just one tool in the toolbox. Because if so yes, we have talked to large dairy groups. I think this requires collaborative thinking and co-generation. If you look at the large landowners in Selwyn, Natau is definitely one of them. We need to really understand if this resonates with them as well, and if it does, we need to move forward together. The largest employer in Selwyn District, I think, I stand corrected if I'm wrong, Sam, is Fonterra. Okay, I'll maybe Lincoln University. But like, we're all very much dependent. Like, whether it's Fonterra or Lincoln University, we're both really dependent on that rural land-based sector. So yes, there is support and benefits.
Thank you.
Phil?
Thank you. I'm just, again, this is support. This is amazing stuff. Thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you, Sharon, for making this happen. I mean, I was at that meeting, we talked about this, and what a remarkable thing for our economy if we could be modelling the way of trickling down to the business, a non-fossil fuel generated electricity come to Selwyn. Now that's But we also talked about things like agri-research, so it'd be nice to see what that looks like when they're sitting down there, and also food tech, how we feed New Zealand, and just see what they look like. So these were I remember I wasn't in your group, but I was in another group, and so it's really exciting stuff. And this is remarkable. This is absolutely that we actually thought speaking about this stuff here. So thank you very much, Sharon.
Again, that's just the beauty of the economic development workshops that these wonderful ladies have been leading. And I can only tell you that there's some amazing conversations have fallen out of them, and this is just one of them. And so we've got other groups that we as a council have brought together that is initiating some amazingly exciting conversations that could only bode well for this district, and we look forward to those other groups coming to present to you too. This is one of a number of opportunities, and I think it's great. You know, Sam and Vim, they cornered me in the car park after the forum, and they said, "Have we got a deal for you?" It's like, sweet. Let's go there. But again, this is just part of that checks and balances of coming back and just saying, here's some of the benefits that's come out of the investment we've put into date into economic development. Councillors, general sense of, are you happy for us to continue in this direction?
Yeah, thank you for that. Is everyone in consensus that we carry on with and get Sharon to continue with this? Anyone against?
Oh.
No.
Hang on, Bob.
Okay, yeah.
Sorry. Well, I am supportive in a general sense, but we've yet to decide on the economic support package that goes along with it. So that's what I guess we can agree to it in principle, but we're yet to decide on discussions around it.
Yep, and that's point well made and noted. I think that the beauty of this one is that we're not looking for a huge input in terms of investment from Selwyn, which helps a little bit with this one. But yes, duly noted.
That was indeed the idea, Shane. We were not going to be here asking for money. The whole idea was that we could actually activate the leadership and the community in Selwyn without raising ratepayers taxes. So that's still our aim. So to make sure that we create prosperity without increasing costs.
Completely. Thank you very much, Wimmer. I completely agree and understand the point of it is the early investment now to reduce it in the future, but also consideration to mana whenua as well with the kōrero.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for your presentation. No doubt we'll be discussing this at length in the future, and we'll have a break for 10 minutes if you'd like to join us for morning tea.
Thank you so much. And I'd like to give a shout out to Sam and wish her well in recovery, because this was definitely teamwork between Sam Elder and myself. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Just did it in 2 hours. Just did it in 2 hours.
Who would have thought?
You never know, do you? You don't honestly know.
God, I think the topics that we put out
Yeah,
did bring out a whole lot of
they did,
conversation.
and I knew they would.
Some of them, though, we're starting to get into the business.
Yes,
and
I know.
There is
Yeah,
a balance
I know.
to be struck. So
Yeah.
it doesn't. It was
Yeah.
certainly filled
There was
in
still-
time, and people felt engaged.
Well, I think that's the biggest part of it. You know, I've had lots of people say to me, you know, councillors, that, we don't really, and to be honest, that's the best thing that's been done for a long time, in my opinion, because it's all together, as Sophie said, and then it is. I'll forgive you, just.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's all right. No, I sort of didn't like to be rude because I seem to be trying to stop all of it.
Yeah, it's just my apologies that I did.
No,
I did
I'm
not
glad
mean
you
to-
did, because I was sort of going.
I thought, oh no, this is an extensive list here. So
I know, yes.
I was
Yeah.
trying to catch around and didn't. I thought, oh, bugger it.
Yeah, no, do it.
So
Look, there's any-
I will
no.
take a slap on the wrist, and that's
That's
absolutely
all right.
fine.
No. Look, I'd rather you do that. It's quite funny. All the way through, she was asking me what page. Okay, have a resolution to exclude the public, please. Sophie? Nicole? All those in favour? Against? Carried, thank you. There was no apologies. There'll be the same apologies that were before. Confirmation of excluded minutes. A mover and a seconder. Sam and Deborah, all those for.